The sun sank slowly behind the western mountains, casting long golden shadows across the dusty road. The air smelled of pine and earth, heavy with the scent of approaching night. Daniel Hart, 38, gripped the steering wheel of his old blue pickup truck, staring ahead. His jaw was stiff with a few days' stubble, his eyes tired, haunted. He had come here alone, escaping grief and guilt. 3 months ago, his wife had died in a car accident. His son Ethan blamed him. Their last words had been an argument, and then everything had changed. Now he drove through the silent wilderness, seeking clarity, solitude, and perhaps redemption. He had heard of Black Ridge National Forest, a place the maps did not fully reveal, a valley that locals called the valley that no map shows. They said travelers who entered often vanished, that time seemed to behave strangely, that something watched from the shadows. Daniel parked the truck at the forest edge, stepped out, and breathed the cool evening air. The wind rustled the pine needles, and somewhere a bird called, lonely and distant. He pitched his tent and built a small fire. As night fell, the sky opened into a blanket of stars. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, faint footsteps in the brush reached his ears, rhythmic and deliberate. At first he thought of deer or another animal, but the cadence was too human. Fear gripped him. At 2 in the morning, Daniel stepped out, shining his flashlight into the darkness. About 30 feet away, a figure stood perfectly still, black, featureless, absorbing the light. No face, no eyes, only the silhouette of a human form. Daniel shouted, "Hey, who's there? I need help!" Silence answered him. The figure did not move but shifted slightly, as if observing, then faded into the trees. This was no human being. He stumbled back into his tent, locking the zipper tight, heart pounding, unable to sleep. Every rustle of leaves sounded like a step. Every shadow seemed alive. Morning came, pale and cold. The terror of the night lingered, a weight in his chest. Determined to understand, he packed his backpack and ventured deeper into the forest. There were no paths, no trails, only thick trees and his compass. The forest grew darker, the air heavier, as if guiding him inward. Hours passed before he reached a wide clearing, a circular valley surrounded by towering mountains. The air felt wrong, almost solid, as if time itself slowed. He checked his GPS, no signal. The compass spun aimlessly, pointing nowhere. Panic rose. How could this be? As he explored, he found old wooden cabins abandoned for decades, windows broken, doors hanging, floors dusty. Curiosity drew him into one. Silence greeted him, thick and absolute. On a table lay a dusty journal. On the cover, Eleanor Wren, 1954. Daniel's hands shook as he opened it. The first page read, "If you are reading this, you are trapped in the valley. Time does not flow here as it should. One day can pass like a minute, another like an hour." He read further. "We are trapped. No one leaves. The shadow man feeds on fear, memory, and the past of those who enter." A sudden knock made him jump. The doorway framed a dark silhouette, entirely black, no features, no sound. Its eyes glowed red. Slowly it receded and vanished. Daniel ran blindly from the cabin, compass and GPS useless. Hours passed, or was it minutes? The sun hung frozen. Time itself seemed broken. He realized the valley had swallowed reality. Somewhere inside, fear gnawed at him, but he pressed onward, deeper into the unknown. The valley stretched endlessly, mountains rising like walls, trees twisted in impossible shapes. Shadows moved just beyond sight. The wind carried whispers, unintelligible yet urgent. Daniel stumbled upon another cabin, smaller and more decrepit. Inside he found remnants of old lives, broken chairs, a rusted stove, papers yellowed with age. Among them another journal, older still, detailing lives trapped decades ago, some gone mad, some resigned, some vanished entirely. He read about the Shadow Man, the entity that consumed fear, how it could mimic voices of lost loved ones, how it could paralyze minds, how the valley itself warped time to feed its hunger. Daniel felt cold. He remembered his wife, her smile, her laughter, the argument with Ethan. Guilt surged. The Shadow Man would know. It would feed. He closed his eyes, breathing heavily, trying to focus, trying to remember courage. Night fell again. The valley seemed alive. Trees whispered. Shadows slithered. A figure emerged from the dark. Its eyes were crimson, unblinking. It did not attack, but observed, measuring, testing. Daniel whispered to himself, "I am not afraid." The figure hesitated. Fear surged in him anyway, memories of loss pressing down. He remembered his wife, his son, the pain of failure. Then he steadied himself. "I forgive myself." The words echoed into the night. The shadow recoiled, twisting, fading into mist. The forest exhaled. Calm returned. Daniel realized he had survived the valley's first test. But the valley was vast, and the Shadow Man's hunger infinite. He pressed onward, climbing rocky paths, crossing streams that reflected impossible skies, moving deeper into the heart of the mapless wilderness. He came upon a cliff overlooking the valley floor. The moon cast pale silver light. He thought of leaving, escaping back to reality, but something drew him onward. The valley was alive, and it demanded a reckoning. He descended into the mist, ready for whatever awaited. The journal tucked under his arm, memories of fear and love intertwined in his heart. The night pressed close, shadows moving in unnatural patterns, but he walked steadily, a man confronting the abyss, ready to survive, to face the Shadow Man, and perhaps, finally, to find his way home. Daniel continued through the misty valley, each step echoing softly against the strange, quiet forest floor. The trees twisted unnaturally, their limbs like reaching fingers. Shadows seemed to move just beyond the edges of his vision, dissolving whenever he tried to focus. Time felt stretched, warped. The sun, or what he thought was the sun, hung frozen above the mountains, refusing to move. The air was thick and cold, pressing against his lungs. Daniel felt disoriented, but he pressed onward. Somewhere in the distance, a low, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the air. It was not the wind. It was not an animal. It was the valley itself, resonating with a pulse that seemed alive. He clutched the journal tightly, its pages filled with warnings and tales of travelers who had been trapped for days, months, even years, though the valley's time was unmeasurable. Daniel paused at a creek. The water reflected a sky that did not belong to the real world, pale, shifting, almost liquid. Kneeling, he drank, feeling its chill crawl into his bones. A sound startled him. Footsteps behind him, silent and deliberate. He spun, flashlight cutting through the shadows, but saw nothing, only the twisting forest and the thickening fog. He continued, his mind racing. The valley seemed endless, yet every path led him forward, deeper into its heart. Around a bend, he discovered another cabin, smaller, nearly falling apart. Inside, a fireplace caked with ash, a wooden chair overturned, and in the corner, a single shoe, worn and weathered. Daniel felt a shiver run down his spine. This valley had claimed people before. The journal warned of the Shadow Man's games, how it mimicked voices of lost loved ones. Suddenly, Daniel heard a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Daniel." It was soft, sorrowful. His heart leapt. He spun, searching the fog, but saw nothing. He whispered back, "Who's there?" Silence answered. The whisper returned, closer, more desperate. "Daniel, forgive me." It was his wife's voice. His chest tightened. Could it be real? Or was it the valley, the Shadow Man, feeding on his memories? He shut his eyes and forced himself to breathe, grounding in the present. "It's not real! It's not real!" he whispered, but the sound echoed unnaturally, repeating, stretching. He ran, stumbling through roots and rocks, the journal clutched against his chest. The whisper followed, overlapping with another, Ethan's voice, then his wife's, then dozens of voices from memories he didn't remember. Panic surged, but then, deep in his mind, he focused. He remembered that calm, that fire from the first night. He repeated aloud, "I forgive myself. I forgive them." The whispers faltered. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The fog parted slightly, revealing a faint path leading toward a distant ridge. He followed it, cautiously. As he climbed, he noticed shapes carved into the cliff walls, ancient symbols, faded and worn, yet pulsing with some faint energy. Daniel ran his fingers over the markings. A warmth spread through him. The valley seemed to recognize resolve, courage, acknowledgement of fear. Reaching the top of the ridge, he looked back. The valley stretched endlessly below, twisting and shifting. The moonlight, or what he thought was the moonlight, hung frozen above the mountains, bathing the landscape in silver. He realized he was not entirely lost, that he could navigate if he stayed alert, if he remained aware of his own mind, his own strength. Yet he also knew the Shadow Man watched, testing, probing, always present. He began his descent into the valley floor, moving carefully, listening to the whispers of wind and shadows, trusting instinct and memory. Each step carried weight, yet also relief. He was alive. He had faced fear directly, and he had survived. But the valley was vast. The Shadow Man was patient. And somewhere, ahead, something unimaginable waited. Daniel pressed onward into the valley, each step echoing against the strange stillness that enveloped him. The trees grew taller, their branches weaving overhead like a vaulted cathedral, filtering what little light existed into shifting patterns on the forest floor. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, elongating and shrinking as if alive. Time had no meaning here. He checked his watch, but the hand spun wildly, impossible to read. The compass was equally useless, the needle swinging in chaotic arcs. The valley had its own rules, its own rhythm, and he was bound to it. Somewhere in the distance, a faint movement caught his eye. A figure, dark and indistinct, moved with a fluid, unnatural grace. Daniel froze. The figure paused, as though studying him, then dissolved into the mist. His heart raced. The journal burned against his chest as he clutched it for courage. The whispers began again, faint at first, almost imperceptible, and then growing clearer. Voices of those long gone, voices he had loved and lost, echoed from all directions. "Daniel, Daniel," they called, weaving sorrow and longing into a chorus of the past. He shook his head, trying to focus, but the valley seemed to respond, feeding on his fear and memory. Sweat ran down his back, cold and clammy. He pressed forward, forcing himself to breathe, to step carefully over roots and rocks. The ground shifted beneath his feet, though he couldn't see the change. Rocks seemed larger than before, hills steeper, trees closer. The valley played with perception, bending reality. Eventually, he reached a cliff overlooking a deeper part of the valley. The fog rolled beneath him, swirling like ghostly waves. He glimpsed shapes moving in the mist, small and quick, disappearing before he could identify them. He felt a presence behind him. Slowly, without turning, he spoke aloud. "I am not afraid." The words trembled at first, but grew steadier. Silence answered, and for a moment the valley itself seemed to listen. He turned, saw nothing, and continued descending. As he walked, he discovered remnants of people who had come before: a torn backpack, a cracked lantern, shoes half buried in moss. Each item spoke of struggle, of survival, of despair. He felt their stories pressing against him, a reminder of what awaited those who faltered. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the valley itself breathed down his neck. Then came the sound, soft, almost melodic, a tune that seemed familiar, yet distorted. He realized it was a lullaby his mother used to sing. His chest tightened. Memories flooded in: laughter, arguments, embraces, losses. The valley fed them all. Daniel closed his eyes, drew a deep breath, and whispered, "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I will survive." The melody faltered, twisted, and then vanished into silence. The mist parted slightly, revealing a path lined with jagged stones, leading toward a series of ancient ruins half swallowed by the forest. He moved cautiously, each step deliberate, aware of every sound, every movement. As he approached, he saw carvings in the stone, symbols and figures, some resembling humans, others entirely alien, their meaning lost to time. A chill ran down his spine. He knew these ruins were remnants of others who had tried to understand the valley. Some had survived, some had not. At the heart of the ruins, he discovered a small, circular chamber. The air here was thicker, charged, as if the valley's energy concentrated in this spot. Daniel stepped inside, feeling the weight of centuries of presence, of eyes that had never blinked, of shadows that never slept. The whispers returned, layered and urgent, weaving through the air like wind through dry leaves. "You belong, you belong, you belong," they said, repeating endlessly. He raised his voice. "I am here. I am alive. I belong to myself." The echoes shifted, softened, and he felt the valley's pressure ease slightly, as if acknowledging his defiance. But he knew this was only the beginning. The Shadow Man had not abandoned him. It lurked in every shadow, in every whisper, in the very ground beneath his feet. Stepping back into the forest, Daniel pressed onward, deeper into the heart of the mapless valley. The path twisted, the fog thickened, yet he moved steadily. Each step tested him, each shadow challenged him, yet he persisted, guided by courage, memory, and the faint light of determination burning inside him. Night approached again, but Daniel did not falter. He knew the valley demanded endurance, demanded confrontation. Somewhere ahead, the Shadow Man waited, patient and eternal. But Daniel's resolve was growing stronger, like a flame refusing to die. He walked on, into the unknown, into the very soul of the valley that no map could ever show.
Daniel moved deeper into the valley, the ground uneven beneath his boots, rocks jutting out like teeth waiting to trip him. The mist clung to the trees, and the air was thick with an unnatural humidity that made it hard to breathe. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision, stretching impossibly long, then vanishing when he tried to focus. The valley had a rhythm of its own, one he could not yet fully comprehend. As he rounded a bend, he noticed a low-lying fog pooling in a depression in the earth. Shapes moved beneath it, small and fast, like animals, yet with an eerie, deliberate purpose. He slowed, listening. Whispers floated through the fog, soft at first, then growing louder, layering upon one another until they formed a chorus of voices, voices that were familiar, yet distorted. "Daniel, Daniel, come to us, Daniel." The voice of his wife echoed clearly among the others. His chest tightened with grief and fear, but he forced himself to take steady steps, gripping the journal in one hand and his flashlight in the other. The valley seemed to pulse with life, as if aware of his presence, as if measuring his resolve. He realized he needed to move quickly before the whispers grew stronger, before the valley found ways to trap him in his own memories. He passed a fallen tree, its roots twisted like a skeletal hand reaching out of the earth, and climbed over a ridge. From the top, he could see a wide expanse of the valley stretching below, rivers of fog winding between dark forests. In the distance, a faint light shimmered, flickering as if alive. It called to him, a promise of safety or a trap, he could not tell. Yet he felt compelled, drawn toward it, as though the valley itself was leading him somewhere. As he descended, he noticed remnants of those who had been here before, rusted tools, broken furniture, faded journals, all scattered along the paths and partially buried in moss. Each item told a story of struggle, despair, and the unrelenting test of this place. The whispers grew louder again, weaving in his mind, attempting to manipulate, to weaken his resolve. He pressed his hand to his chest and whispered, "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I will survive." The voices hesitated, faltered, and then softened, allowing him a brief moment of clarity. Daniel followed the flickering light into a narrow canyon, where the air grew colder and the shadows thicker. The walls of the canyon were carved with symbols, ancient, alien, yet strangely familiar. They seemed to pulse faintly, responding to his presence, guiding him toward the center. At the end of the canyon, he came upon a stone archway half buried in mist. Beyond it lay a clearing, eerily illuminated by a pale silver light. The air here was charged, almost electric, and he felt an invisible weight pressing down, testing his courage. In the center of the pool was water, still and black, reflecting a sky that was not the sky. As he approached, the surface rippled, and a figure rose from the darkness, a shadow, humanoid but shifting, its red eyes glowing faintly in the silver light. The Shadow Man had appeared. Daniel's heart raced, but he did not flee. He stood his ground, gripping the journal and raising his voice, steady and firm. "I am here. I am alive. You will not break me." The shadow moved closer, gliding over the water as though it were solid. The whispers surged, voices from his past, temptations to flee, to give in to despair. Yet Daniel held his ground. He remembered his wife, his son, the grief, the pain, but also the love, the moments of joy, the resilience that had brought him here. "I forgive myself," he repeated aloud. "I forgive them. I am stronger than fear." The shadow recoiled slightly, as if acknowledging his defiance. Its form flickered, the red eyes dimmed, then it vanished into the mist. The clearing fell silent. Daniel exhaled, feeling a surge of relief, but he knew this was only the beginning. The valley's heart still lay ahead, deeper, darker, and far more dangerous. Stepping away from the pool, he continued along a narrow path that twisted into the forest. The shadows seemed to watch. The trees shifted slightly, yet he walked steadily, guided by courage, memory, and determination. Each step carried him further into the unknown, into the soul of the valley that no map could ever show, where time, fear, and memory intertwined, and where survival required more than just will, it required understanding acceptance, and the ability to confront the darkness within.
Daniel pressed onward through the thickening forest, every footstep measured and deliberate. The air was heavy, damp, and almost electric, carrying whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Time felt distorted, minutes stretched into hours, yet hours seemed to pass in moments. The valley itself breathed around him, alive and watchful. Shadows twisted unnaturally, weaving between the trees, sometimes taking shapes that resembled people he had known, faces blurred and shifting, tempting him with familiarity and fear. He gripped the journal tighter, knowing that it held more than mere words. It held the stories of those who had survived or perished in this valley. He came upon a fallen log, half buried in moss and roots. Beneath it, the ground opened slightly, revealing a shallow tunnel carved into the earth. Hesitation gnawed at him, yet curiosity and survival drove him forward. He entered the tunnel, crouching low, the walls damp and cold against his skin. The whispers followed him here, echoing off the stone, a chorus of voices calling his name, urging him to turn back, to surrender. "I will not," he said aloud, his voice steady despite the fear curling in his stomach. The tunnel opened into a cavern larger than he could have imagined. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, dripping water into shallow pools on the cavern floor. In the center, a circle of stones formed an altar, worn and ancient, pulsing faintly with an eerie light. Daniel approached cautiously. As he stepped closer, he realized the light was emanating from small glowing symbols etched into the stones, similar to those he had seen along the canyon walls, but more intricate, more alive. He reached out, brushing his fingers over the carvings, and a shiver ran down his spine. The whispers rose to a deafening crescendo, voices overlapping, layering grief, fear, and memories of those long lost. Suddenly a figure emerged from the shadows, taller than any man, its shape shifting, eyes glowing a deep, unearthly red. The Shadow Man had found him. Daniel froze, the cavern's cold pressing into his bones. Yet he did not flee. He knew running would only feed the valley, feed the shadow. He raised his voice, steady, resolute. "I am not afraid. I am alive. I will not let you consume me." The shadow advanced slowly, gliding across the cavern floor, its form flickering like a living shadow. The air seemed to thicken, pressing on him, but he remained firm, repeating, "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am stronger than fear." For a long, silent moment, the shadow paused, tilting its head, its eyes glowing, studying him. Then it receded, dissolving into the cavern's shadows. The whispers faded, leaving only a faint hum, like the valley itself, exhaling. Daniel fell to his knees, exhausted but unbroken. He had survived the valley's first trials, yet he knew there were more ahead, deeper and darker than anything he had faced. Rising, he continued along a narrow passage leading out of the cavern, each step cautious but determined. The valley stretched endlessly before him, twisted landscapes, rivers of fog, forests that seemed to breathe. He moved steadily, guided by memory, courage, and the resolve that had brought him this far. As night approached, the forest grew quieter, almost unnaturally so. Stars shimmered above, though their light seemed distorted, bending in impossible ways. Daniel understood that the valley's heart was still ahead, where time, fear, and memory intertwined in ways no human mind could fully comprehend. Yet he pressed on, ready to face whatever awaited, knowing that survival demanded more than courage. It demanded understanding, acceptance, and the ability to confront the darkness within himself.
Daniel moved cautiously through the thickening forest, the mist curling around his boots and clinging to his clothes. The air was heavy with an unidentifiable scent, earthy yet metallic, as if the valley itself exhaled something ancient and powerful. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the forest floor, bending and flickering like living ink. Every sound seemed amplified: the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the distant call of an unseen bird. He held the journal close, feeling the worn leather cover press against his chest. Each page he had read pulsed with warnings, with stories of those who had succumbed to fear, who had wandered too long and never returned. His heart pounded, yet he moved forward. Ahead, a faint glow shimmered between the trees, casting long, distorted shadows. The glow pulsed rhythmically, as if breathing, and Daniel felt drawn to it, compelled by curiosity and a sense that this light might hold answers or a path forward. He pressed on, navigating twisted roots and uneven ground. The whispers returned, soft at first, then growing louder. Familiar voices, his wife, his son, friends long gone, layered over one another, echoing through the valley, testing his resolve. He whispered back, steadying his breath, "I am here. I am alive. I forgive myself. I forgive them." The voices faltered, retreating into the mist. The glow ahead revealed a small clearing. In its center, a stone pedestal stood, etched with symbols that seemed to shimmer with a faint inner light. Daniel approached slowly. The pedestal radiated warmth, subtle but real, unlike the chilling presence of the valley itself. As he touched it, a ripple of energy passed through him, sending shivers down his spine. He sensed that the valley recognized his courage, that it acknowledged his determination to face the darkness rather than flee from it. A sudden movement caught his eye. From the shadows emerged the Shadow Man, taller and more imposing than before, its form flickering like black smoke. Its eyes glowed crimson, piercing the dim light of the clearing. His chest tightened, yet he did not retreat. He raised his voice, firm and unwavering. "I am stronger than fear. You cannot control me." The shadow paused, tilting its head, as if measuring the strength of his will. The whispers of the valley rose again, now a storm of voices, layering grief, love, and memory into a relentless wave. Daniel closed his eyes, drawing strength from the memories he cherished, both painful and joyful. He repeated aloud, "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am alive. I am stronger than fear." The shadow recoiled, its form flickering violently, and then it vanished, dissolving into the mist. Silence fell over the clearing. Daniel exhaled, feeling the tension in his body release slightly, though he knew this was only one challenge among many. The valley's heart still awaited him, deeper, darker, and more treacherous than anything he had faced.
He turned from the pedestal and continued down a narrow path leading toward a gorge where the fog rolled thick and heavy. The forest seemed to shift as he walked, trees bending subtly, the ground rising and falling in unnatural patterns. Yet he pressed on, steady, aware, determined. Every step tested his endurance, his focus, his ability to confront fear. The valley was alive, and it tested him constantly, but Daniel felt something growing within him, a resolve tempered by fear, honed by survival. Ahead, faint silhouettes flickered through the fog, impossible shapes that twisted and shimmered. Daniel's heart raced, but he pressed forward. He understood now that the valley demanded more than courage. It demanded understanding, patience, and the ability to face the darkness within himself. With each step, he became more attuned to the rhythm of the valley, sensing the subtle shifts, anticipating the whispers and movements of shadow. He walked steadily, deeper into the valley that no map could ever show, where time, fear, and memory intertwined, and where survival meant confronting not just the external dangers, but the shadows within his own mind.
Daniel stepped carefully through the thick fog, each footfall muffled against the moss-covered ground. The valley stretched endlessly before him, a labyrinth of twisted trees, jagged rocks, and rivers of mist that flowed like liquid silver. Time here had no meaning. The sun, or what he thought was the sun, hung frozen above the peaks, its light bending oddly through the dense forest canopy. Shadows shifted constantly, taking shapes both familiar and alien. At one moment, a tree branch resembled the hand of a long-lost friend. The next, it twisted into something monstrous, impossible, sending a chill down his spine. He clutched the journal in one hand, using it as both guide and talisman. Each page he read seemed to pulse with the memories of those who had walked this valley before him, warnings and fragments of survival strategies, hints of the dangers ahead. A faint murmur reached him through the fog. The whispers grew louder, layering over one another, voices of people he had loved, voices of strangers, voices of himself as a child, calling his name. Daniel, Daniel, come, come to us. His chest tightened, but he forced himself to breathe, steadying his nerves. I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am alive, he whispered, the words grounding him. The voices faltered, then retreated slightly into the shadows, allowing him a moment of clarity. He moved toward a distant ridge where the fog seemed thinner. As he climbed, the terrain became more treacherous, rocks jagged and slippery, roots tangled beneath his feet, but he persevered. From the top, he glimpsed a valley within the valley, a depression shrouded in mist where strange glowing symbols marked the ground in a vast, intricate pattern. Drawn to them, he descended slowly, careful to avoid missteps. The symbols pulsed faintly, as if alive, resonating with some unseen power. Daniel felt a mixture of awe and dread, realizing that this place had existed long before humans had mapped the surrounding forests, long before he had ever set foot in the valley. From the mist emerged a figure, the Shadow Man, larger, more menacing than any he had encountered before. Its form flickered, unstable, yet undeniably present, eyes glowing crimson. Daniel's heart raced, but he stood his ground, raising his voice into the mist. You cannot break me. I will not succumb to fear. The shadow paused, tilting its head, the air around it thick with tension. Whispers intensified, overlapping memories and desires, creating a chaotic symphony meant to confuse and weaken him. Daniel focused, centering himself on the truths he held dear.
the love, the loss, the hope, the strength he had discovered within himself. I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am stronger than fear. I am alive. The shadow recoiled, its glowing eyes dimming, its shape flickering violently before dissolving into the mist. Silence followed, heavy and oppressive, yet comforting in its stillness. Daniel exhaled, muscles tense but unwavering. He knew the valley had more trials ahead, deeper into its heart where reality bent and time twisted into unrecognizable forms. He pressed onward, descending a narrow path that led into a dense forest. Every sound was amplified, every shadow a potential threat, yet he moved steadily, guided by courage and understanding. He passed ancient ruins half swallowed by the earth, with carvings and symbols older than any civilization he knew. Some shimmered faintly in the darkness, responding to his presence, as if acknowledging his resolve. The valley was alive, and it tested him constantly, but Daniel felt a growing certainty within himself. He understood that survival required more than courage. It required insight, patience, and the ability to confront both external and internal darkness. Step by step, he advanced deeper into the valley, each movement deliberate, each breath measured. The fog swirled around him like a living entity, whispering secrets, testing his will. Yet he pressed on, determined to reach the heart of the valley that no map could ever show, where time, fear, and memory merged into a challenge that would define the very essence of his being.
Daniel moved through the dense forest, each step deliberate, each breath measured. The fog clung to his clothes and skin, twisting and curling around him as though alive. The valley seemed endless, a labyrinth of impossible terrain. Rivers of mist winding between dark trees, mountains looming like silent guardians. Shadows stretched and shrank with a life of their own, forming shapes familiar and grotesque, testing his resolve with every step. He gripped the journal tightly, the worn leather pressing against his chest, a lifeline of knowledge and warnings from those who had come before. Ahead, he spotted faint lights glimmering in the fog, small and scattered, like fireflies. Yet they pulsed rhythmically, as if breathing. Drawn toward them, he moved cautiously, aware that the valley's illusions could be deadly. The whispers began again, soft and persistent at first, growing into a chorus that enveloped him completely. Voices of the lost, the departed, even his own memories called his name, pulling at his mind, testing his courage. "Daniel! Daniel! Come to us!" The voice of his wife cut through the others, sorrowful and haunting. He tightened his grip on the journal, whispering to himself, "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am alive." The voices faltered for a moment, giving him clarity. He continued forward, stepping over roots and rocks, his senses hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. The terrain grew steeper, cliffs rising sharply around him, and the fog thickened, limiting visibility. From the mist emerged a figure, the Shadow Man, its form tall, dark, and flickering like smoke, eyes glowing a deep crimson. Daniel froze for a moment, then stood his ground. "I will not be afraid. I am alive. You cannot control me." The shadow moved slowly, hovering across the uneven ground, its presence suffocating and oppressive. Whispers intensified, layering memories, fear, and doubt in an attempt to weaken him. Daniel focused inward, recalling love, loss, hope, and the strength that had carried him this far. He repeated aloud, "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am stronger than fear." The shadow recoiled, its glowing eyes dimming, its form flickering violently before dissolving into the mist. Silence followed, heavy and profound, yet not entirely comforting. Daniel exhaled, feeling the tension in his body ease slightly. But he knew the valley's heart still lay ahead, deeper, darker, and more treacherous than anything he had faced. He pressed onward, descending a narrow, twisting path that led into a thicker, older part of the forest. Every sound was amplified, every shadow a potential threat, yet he moved steadily, guided by courage and understanding. He passed ancient ruins, half buried by time, with carvings older than any civilization he knew. Some shimmered faintly in the dim light, responding to his presence, acknowledging his resolve. The valley tested him constantly, but Daniel's certainty grew with every step. Survival demanded more than courage. It required patience, insight, and the ability to confront both external and internal darkness. Step by step, he advanced deeper into the heart of the valley, each movement deliberate, each breath measured. The fog swirled like a living entity, whispering secrets, testing his will, yet he pressed on, determined to reach the very core of the valley that no map could ever show, where time, fear, and memory intertwined, a place that would test the essence of who he was and who he could become.
Daniel continued along the winding path, the fog thickening with every step, curling around the trees and his boots like a living entity. The valley stretched endlessly before him, a maze of twisted forests, jagged rocks, and rivers of mist that shimmered with an unnatural light. Shadows shifted constantly, forming shapes both familiar and alien, teasing his mind with illusions of faces he knew, then twisting into monstrous forms that vanished as he looked directly at them. He gripped the journal tightly, feeling the worn leather press into his chest, a lifeline connecting him to the stories of those who had survived and those who had perished in this valley. A soft murmur reached him through the mist. The whispers began, soft at first, overlapping into a chorus of voices. Names, memories, regrets, all calling to him, attempting to weaken his resolve. Daniel, Daniel, come to us. Daniel. His wife's voice cut clearly through the fog, sweet and sorrowful, pulling at his heart. He paused, took a deep breath, and whispered aloud, I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am alive. The voices faltered, giving him a moment of clarity. He pressed on, carefully navigating roots, rocks, and uneven ground. The path steepened, cliffs rising sharply on either side, shrouded in dense fog that distorted perception. Then he saw it, a figure emerging from the mist, the Shadow Man, taller and darker than before, its shape flickering like smoke, eyes glowing crimson. Daniel's chest tightened, but he held his ground, raising his voice firmly. You cannot control me. I am alive. I am stronger than fear. The shadow hovered, its presence suffocating and oppressive, moving silently across the foggy terrain. Whispers intensified, a storm of memories, grief, and fear swirling around him, yet Daniel centered himself, recalling love, loss, hope, and the inner strength that had carried him this far. I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am stronger than fear, he repeated, voice unwavering. The shadow recoiled, its glowing eyes dimming, its form flickering violently before dissolving back into the mist. Silence settled over the valley, thick and profound, though not entirely comforting. Daniel exhaled, muscles tense but determined. He knew the trials were far from over. The valley's heart still lay ahead, deeper and darker than anything he had encountered. He followed a narrow, twisting path leading into a dense, ancient forest. Every sound was amplified, every shadow a potential threat.
Yet he moved steadily, guided by courage and understanding. He passed ruins swallowed by time, carvings older than any human record, some pulsing faintly with life, as if acknowledging his resolve. The valley tested him continuously, but Daniel's certainty grew stronger with each step. Survival demanded more than courage. It required patience, insight, and confronting both external and internal darkness. Step by step, he advanced deeper into the valley's heart, each movement deliberate, each breath measured. The fog swirled around him like a living, whispering entity, testing his will. Yet he pressed on, determined to reach the core of the valley that no map could ever reveal, where time, fear, and memory merged into a challenge that would define not only his survival, but the essence of who he really was.
Daniel pressed forward through the dense fog, each step deliberate and measured. The valley seemed alive, every rustle of leaves, every shadow, every distant echo a test of his resolve. Time had no meaning here. Minutes stretched into hours, yet hours seemed to vanish in moments. The twisted forest surrounded him, trees gnarled like ancient sentinels, their branches forming a canopy that distorted the light, casting shifting patterns across the forest floor. Shadows shifted constantly, sometimes resembling faces he knew, other times monstrous, alien shapes that disappeared when he looked directly at them. He clutched the journal tightly, its worn leather pressing against his chest, a tether to those who had survived or failed in the valley before him. A low hum began to echo through the forest, almost imperceptible at first, then growing louder, resonating deep in his bones. The whispers returned, voices overlapping, some sweet and familiar, others haunting and distorted. "Daniel, Daniel, come to us." His wife's voice called from somewhere in the mist, soft yet insistent. He forced himself to breathe, grounding in the present, and whispered aloud, "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am alive." The voices faltered, retreating slightly, giving him a moment of clarity. He pressed on, stepping over roots, rocks, and uneven ground, aware of the subtle shifts in the fog, the forest, the valley itself. The path led him to a ridge overlooking a lower section of the valley. Below, he saw strange lights pulsing rhythmically, arranged in geometric patterns across the terrain. They seemed to beckon him, and he felt compelled to descend toward them. The terrain grew steeper and more treacherous. Each step required focus, balance, and caution. The fog thickened, reducing visibility to mere feet. Then, emerging from the mist, the Shadow Man appeared, larger, darker, more imposing than before. Its crimson eyes glowed intensely, piercing through the fog. Daniel's heart raced, but he did not retreat. "You cannot break me. I am alive. I am stronger than fear," he said firmly. The shadow hovered silently, its presence suffocating, yet Daniel stood his ground, feeling the strength he had cultivated through every trial in this valley. Whispers surged around him, a storm of memories, doubts, and long-buried fears. Daniel focused inward, recalling love, grief, resilience, and courage, repeating aloud, "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am stronger than fear. I am alive." The shadow recoiled, flickering violently, its eyes dimming before dissolving into the mist. Silence fell, deep and heavy, though not entirely comforting. Daniel exhaled, muscles tense but steady. He knew the valley's heart still awaited him, deeper and darker than anything he had faced. A narrow path wound through dense, ancient trees, leading him further into the unknown. Every sound was magnified, every shadow a potential threat, yet he moved steadily, guided by insight, courage, and determination. Ancient ruins appeared, half swallowed by moss and earth, their carvings glowing faintly, as if acknowledging his presence. The valley continued its relentless test, but Daniel's certainty and resolve grew. Survival required more than courage.
It demanded patience, understanding, and confronting the darkness both outside and within. Step by step he advanced deeper into the valley, the fog swirling like a living entity, whispering secrets and testing his will. He pressed on, determined to reach the very core of the valley that no map could reveal, where time, fear, and memory intertwined into a challenge that would define his survival, his understanding, and ultimately the essence of who he really was.
Daniel followed the narrow path deeper into the ancient forest, the fog drifting around him like a silent guardian. The trees here were older than anything he had ever seen, massive trunks twisted like coiled serpents, roots sprawling across the forest floor like veins pulsing with faint light. The air felt heavier, denser, almost sacred. Every breath carried the taste of damp earth and forgotten memories. The valley was changing. He could feel it. The deeper he went, the more the landscape bent, as if the rules of nature were slowly unraveling. The ground beneath his feet rippled suddenly, shifting like soft clay. The sky above flickered between twilight and dawn, never settling. Time folded in on itself, stretching and collapsing without warning. Daniel paused, steadying himself. He clutched the journal close, its pages whispering faint warnings when he brushed his thumb along the edges. He opened it briefly, scanning fragments written by trembling hands, warnings of the valley's center, where reality twisted the mind and forced the heart to confront truths buried too deep to name. A sudden gust of wind swept through the forest, carrying with it the soft echo of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, not his own. Daniel froze. The fog parted slightly, revealing a faint silhouette moving between the trees. His breath caught. The figure looked familiar, painfully familiar. His son. The same small frame, the same slight tilt of the head, the same gentle steps he used to take when walking beside him. "Dad." The voice was soft, trembling, drenched in longing. Daniel's throat tightened, emotion clawing up from deep within him. But something was wrong. The boy's shadow stretched unnaturally long behind him, flickering like tattered cloth in a storm. His eyes glowed faintly, not with life, but with reflection, mirroring the valley, not reality. Daniel steadied himself, tears stinging his eyes. "You're not him," he whispered, more to himself than the apparition. The boy stepped closer. "Dad, don't leave me again." The forest pulsed around them, the fog thickening, whispering, urging him to give in, to believe the illusion, to break. Daniel felt his knees weaken. The weight of guilt pressed down on him, but he forced himself to breathe, grounding his thoughts. "I miss him," Daniel said softly. "But I cannot follow shadows." The figure's face flickered, stretching into a twisted imitation of sorrow. "He needed you," it whispered, "and you failed." The words cut deep, slicing through old wounds he had tried so desperately to heal. Daniel closed his eyes, letting the pain wash over him, then whispering back, "I forgive myself. I forgive him. I forgive the past." The fog trembled violently. The figure convulsed, its form collapsing inward before dissolving into the mist like dust on the wind. Silence fell. Heavy. Absolute. Daniel wiped his eyes and continued onward. The forest seemed to shift with each step, opening a winding trail lined with stones carved with symbols that matched the ones he had seen in the ruins. They pulsed faintly as he passed, as if acknowledging his resilience. He descended into a shallow ravine where the fog swirled like a slow-moving river. The air was unnaturally still. No birds, no rustling leaves, nothing but the distant hum of the valley itself. From the corner of his eye he saw movement, something gliding along the ravine's edge. The Shadow Man appeared once more, taller and more imposing than ever before. Its body rippled like liquid darkness, eyes burning with deep crimson light. Daniel's pulse quickened, but fear did not control him now. He stood tall,
anchoring himself with every breath. The shadow man hovered closer, its presence thickening the air, pressing against Daniel's chest like an invisible hand. Whispers erupted around him, voices of loved ones, strangers, memories, regrets, all blending into a deafening storm. Daniel clenched his fists, grounding himself in truth, in resilience, in acceptance. He raised his voice, steady and powerful. "I forgive myself. I forgive them. I am alive. I am stronger than fear." The shadow let out a low, rumbling sound. Anger, frustration, or something older than either emotion. Its form shuddered violently, then retreated into the darkness, dissolving into the mist like dust on the wind. Silence fell, heavy, absolute. Daniel exhaled, the ravine suddenly lighter, the pressure lifting from his chest. He continued forward, each step more certain than the last. He was getting closer to the valley's heart, closer to the truth it guarded, closer to the place where fear, memory, and time converged into a single test that would shape the very core of who he was. And he knew, whatever awaited him there would demand everything he had left.
Ethan walks deeper into the ancient chamber, his footsteps echoing like fading memories of a time long buried beneath the continent. The cold air pressed against his skin as though whispering warnings from voices that had not been heard for thousands of years. His flashlight flickered across stone walls carved with impossible precision, each line telling a fragment of a forgotten epic. The symbols glowed faintly as he passed, reacting to his presence like dormant guardians awakening for the first time in centuries. The deeper he walked, the stronger the humming beneath the ground became, a low vibration that pulsed through his bones, as if the earth itself had a heartbeat. He paused, listening, trying to determine if the sound was natural or something far more intelligent. Then the humming shifted into a softer tone, melodic and rhythmic, almost like a distant chant echoing from another dimension. Ethan felt the air thicken, as though time was slowing around him, stretching each second into something surreal and dreamlike. Ahead of him, the pathway widened into a massive hall, where the walls curved upward into a dome so large that the top was lost in darkness. The dome's surface shimmered faintly, as if coated in fine metallic dust that reflected unseen light. At the center of the hall stood a monumental structure shaped like a spiral rising from the ground, its grooves glowing with a soft blue radiance that pulsed like waves. Ethan approached slowly, sensing both danger and overwhelming curiosity. As he reached out his hand, a sudden warmth spread through the air around the spiral, enveloping him in a gentle but powerful energy that felt like sunlight filtered through water. When his fingers touched the surface, the entire hall awakened. The spiral brightened, the walls lit with flowing patterns, and the dome above rippled like the night sky stirred by an invisible wind. Ethan stumbled back as a surge of images burst through his mind. Visions of an ancient race that once walked the American landscape, long before any known civilization. He saw towering structures made from crystal and stone, vast networks of underground passages connecting distant regions, and people who harnessed natural energies in ways that modern science had yet to imagine. Their society thrived on harmony with the earth, drawing power from rivers, mountains, and the invisible currents flowing beneath the land. But he also saw the collapse, massive storms swallowing cities, quakes splitting continents, and a desperate effort by the ancient builders to preserve their knowledge beneath the ground where time could not easily erase it. The images faded, leaving Ethan breathless and trembling. The spiral dimmed, returning to its gentle pulse. A faint rustling sound emerged from the far corner of the hall, like stone shifting under careful footsteps. Ethan turned sharply, raising his flashlight. At first he saw nothing but darkness, but then a tall figure emerged, its surface glinting like polished stone.
It moved with slow, deliberate precision, and the symbols on its chest glowed faintly in patterns matching those on the walls. Ethan's pulse quickened, but the figure did not approach. It only observed him, head tilted slightly, as if analyzing every breath he took. The air grew still, the humming faded. For a moment Ethan felt weightless, suspended between fear and destiny. The figure raised its hand, palm open, and a narrow beam of blue light extended toward the spiral structure. The spiral responded instantly, its glow intensifying, casting waves of light across the hall that illuminated passages Ethan hadn't noticed before. 4 tunnels branching in different directions, each marked with unique symbols, each leading deeper into the vast underground world. The figure slowly lowered its hand, and the beam disappeared. Then, as silently as it had appeared, it stepped backward into the shadows and vanished. Ethan was alone again, but not the same as before. The visions he had seen, the presence he had felt, the knowledge the spiral had shown him, all of it pointed to one truth. This place was not a myth. It was a library of a forgotten civilization, preserved beneath the American frontier. And he had been chosen, or perhaps summoned, to uncover its secrets. The tunnels waited before him, each one promising danger, revelation, and the possibility of rewriting everything humanity believed about its past. Ethan tightened his grip on his backpack strap, took a long breath, and stepped toward the first tunnel, knowing there was no turning back, only forward, into the depths where the ancient heartbeat of the earth still echoed.
Ethan stepped into the first tunnel, feeling the temperature shift instantly, as if he had crossed an invisible threshold into another world. The air grew warmer, carrying a faint metallic scent like heated minerals rising from the earth's core. The walls around him glowed with soft amber light that seemed to flow beneath the surface of the stone like veins carrying ancient energy. Every few steps, the ground vibrated lightly, not enough to shake him, but enough to remind him that something colossal and alive lay deeper within this subterranean maze. As he walked farther, the tunnel gradually widened until it felt less like a passage and more like an underground canyon carved with precision beyond human understanding. Strange formations jutted from the walls, resembling crystalline roots frozen in time, each one shimmering when his presence stirred the air around them. Ethan felt a subtle pressure in his chest, as though some unseen force was measuring him, scanning him, trying to determine if he was worthy to continue. He pressed forward until the amber glow gave way to a deep red light emanating from a massive chamber ahead. The entrance felt like stepping into the heart of the earth. The chamber's walls curved upward into a massive dome, covered in patterns that resembled constellations, but none he recognized. They flickered like a sky trapped inside stone. At the center of the room stood a gigantic spherical object, hovering several feet above a stone platform. It rotated slowly, without any visible support, emitting a low hum that resonated through Ethan's bones. As he approached, the sphere brightened, projecting faint lines of light outward like flowing tendrils. Ethan raised his hand instinctively, and the sphere reacted instantly, slowing its rotation, narrowing its glow, focusing on him as though acknowledging his arrival. The hum shifted into a steady rhythmic pulse, and the air around the sphere shimmered. Suddenly, the chamber darkened, except for the sphere, which erupted in a flash of light that expanded outward like a silent explosion. Ethan was engulfed in vision. He saw towering crystal towers rising from lush valleys. He saw a people who communicated through patterns of light and sound. He saw great machines that moved without gears or wheels, powered by the earth itself. The sphere showed him a world before recorded history, when enormous networks ran beneath the land, connecting different regions of the continent through tunnels like this one. These ancient architects used the natural frequencies of the planet to store knowledge, heal landscapes, and build structures that even modern science couldn't explain. But then the vision darkened. Ethan saw storms ripping apart entire cities of light, saw volcanoes erupt in chains across the horizon, saw massive floods reshaping coastlines. The ancient people's faces were filled with urgency as they sealed their knowledge within places like this one, hoping future generations would uncover their warnings and understand the mistakes they had made. The vision ended as abruptly as it began, and Ethan collapsed to one knee, breathless. The sphere dimmed back to its soft red glow, as though exhausted by the intensity of what it had shared. Ethan rubbed his eyes and steadied himself, trying to process everything. He felt as though he had lived 1,000 years in just a few seconds. When he finally rose, he noticed something new. A narrow crack had appeared in the far wall, glowing with faint white light. The sphere had activated it. Ethan approached slowly, squeezing through the opening until he found himself in a long corridor filled with mist. The mist swirled around his legs like living fog, cool and silky, and the corridor echoed with faint whispers as though voices from the past drifted within it. He moved carefully, heart pounding, senses alert. The farther he went, the thicker the mist became until he could barely see 2 feet ahead. Then the whispers grew clearer. They were not words he recognized, but they carried emotion, warning, curiosity, sorrow. Ethan continued, refusing to turn back until the mist suddenly parted and revealed another enormous chamber. This one was colder, lined with smooth black stone that absorbed light. Thin beams of white energy flowed from the ceiling to the floor like frozen waterfalls. In the center stood a tall, monolithic structure, shaped like an arrow pointing upward, its surface reflecting faint silhouettes that looked like shadows of people who were not present. Ethan stepped closer, and the reflection shifted, showing him versions of himself, one exploring the tunnels, one trapped beneath rubble, one standing at the entrance of a sunlit valley he had never seen before. The monolith wasn't showing the past. It was showing possibilities, future paths, possible outcomes of his choices. He reached out, touching the cold surface. The reflections vanished, replaced by a single image. Him, standing at a massive stone door deeper within the complex, a door that seemed to pulse with the same blue energy he had seen earlier. The meaning was clear. The path forward was still long, and this monolith was only guiding him, not answering him. He withdrew his hand, feeling both overwhelmed and strangely resolute. He looked toward the far end of the chamber, where another tunnel waited, glowing with pale violet light like the beginning of dawn trapped underground. He inhaled deeply and stepped toward it, knowing that every step drew him closer to the deepest secret of the ancient world, and that whatever waited ahead would change not just his life, but the very story of America itself. Ethan stepped into the violet-lit tunnel, feeling the ground beneath him grow softer, almost cushioned, as though the stone itself had transformed into something organic. The walls around him pulsed gently with waves of color that shifted from violet to deep blue, each pulse creating a faint hum that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. The deeper he walked, the more he sensed that this place was different from every chamber he had explored earlier. It felt alive, not metaphorically, but literally, as if the very architecture breathed in slow intervals, drawing in energy and releasing it in subtle ripples that brushed against his skin. Ethan paused to touch the nearest wall, and the moment his fingers made contact, the surface rippled like liquid metal disturbed by a drop of water. The wall reacted to him, not just sensing his presence, but recognizing him. For a brief moment, he felt a connection, a kind of communication without words, an acknowledgement from whatever intelligence still lingered within these ancient structures. He kept moving until the tunnel opened into a colossal chamber unlike anything he had imagined. The ceiling was extremely high, nearly invisible in the darkness above, but scattered with thousands of small white lights that flickered like stars trapped underground. A massive river of glowing blue water flowed through the center of the chamber, winding softly like a quiet serpent of light. The water emitted a faint warmth and a gentle melodic vibration that felt almost healing. Ethan approached the edge, watching the currents swirl in patterns too precise to be random. It wasn't just water. It was energy in a liquid state, a river designed to transport something far more powerful than simple minerals. Across the river stood a towering doorway carved from a single slab of pale stone, its surface swirling with symbols that moved like living ink. The doorway gave off a soft breeze that smelled of rain and distant forests, a scent that made Ethan's mind fill with memories he hadn't thought of in years. It felt like the doorway was calling him, not with sound, but with emotion. But before he could cross the river, the chamber trembled. A deep rumble rolled through the space, causing ripples across the glowing water. The stars on the ceiling flickered violently, and a sudden column of bright light shot upward from the center of the river, illuminating the entire chamber in a blinding flash. Ethan shielded his eyes, stumbling back as the water erupted upward, forming a spiraling vortex of pure energy. Within the swirling light, a shape began to form, an outline of a humanoid figure made entirely of shimmering particles. As the vortex stabilized, the figure stepped forward onto the river's surface, standing as if gravity held no claim over it. The figure had no distinct face, no clear features, yet Ethan felt its gaze pierce straight through him. The air grew still, the chamber falling into deep silence, except for the soft hum radiating from the figure's luminous body. The figure raised an arm slowly, deliberately, and a thin beam of white light extended from its hand, touching Ethan's chest. Instantly, Ethan felt warmth spread through him, flowing through his veins like liquid fire. Visions flooded his mind, visions not of the past, but of the future. He saw vast landscapes shifting, oceans rising, mountains reshaping, and cities collapsing under forces humanity could not control. He saw new civilizations emerging from the remnants, building structures that echoed the ancient designs buried deep beneath the modern world. He saw people rediscovering knowledge that had been lost for millennia, returning to harmony with the earth. And he saw himself standing at the entrance of a gigantic chamber far deeper within the underground complex, facing a mechanism that would awaken something powerful, something that could either save or destroy what remained of the world. When the visions ended, Ethan fell to his knees, gasping for breath. The figure withdrew the beam of light, and its body flickered, becoming unstable as though its energy was fading. Slowly, the figure dissolved back into the river, and the glowing water calmed, returning to its steady flow. Ethan pushed himself to his feet, shaken but filled with a newfound sense of purpose. Everything he had seen pointed to one terrifying truth. This underground world was not just a remnant of the past, it was a warning, a guide, and a test for the future of humanity. The ancient civilization had foreseen a cycle, one that would repeat unless someone was capable of understanding their message and taking action. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead, took a deep breath, and stepped toward the river. The glowing water parted in a narrow path before him, responding to his determination. He crossed carefully, the warmth of the river brushing against his legs like gentle hands guiding him. When he reached the other side, he stood before the towering doorway. The symbols on it brightened, swirling faster as though excited by his presence. Ethan placed his hand on the surface, and the stone vibrated gently, slowly opening with a deep resonant sound that echoed throughout the chamber. Beyond the doorway lay a long passage leading downward into total darkness, illuminated only by faint threads of blue energy that pulsed like distant lightning buried in the earth. Ethan stepped forward, feeling the weight of destiny press against his shoulders. Whatever lay ahead would reveal the next piece of the ancient puzzle, and he knew the journey was only becoming more dangerous, more mysterious, and more vital with every step.
Ethan stepped into the descending passage, feeling the air grow colder with every step, as though he was walking deeper into the planet's forgotten memories. The faint blue threads of energy along the walls pulsed slowly, guiding him forward like veins carrying ancient power. The tunnel sloped downward at a steady angle, and the deeper he went, the more he felt a subtle pressure in his ears, as if the atmosphere itself was thickening. The floor beneath him was smooth, worn by countless footsteps from a civilization long vanished. The echo of his boots stretched far into the darkness behind him, reinforcing just how alone he was. After several minutes, the passage widened abruptly into a long corridor, lined with towering columns carved from stone that shimmered like polished obsidian. Each column bore intricate patterns that shifted when he viewed them from different angles, forming shapes that resembled maps, creatures, and celestial patterns not seen in the modern sky. As he walked past each column, the symbols glowed faintly, responding to his presence as though greeting an expected traveler. The corridor ended at an enormous circular door made of dark metal, unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. It wasn't dull like iron or shining like steel. Instead, it absorbed light, giving it a void-like appearance that felt impossible to comprehend. Embedded in the door were hundreds of tiny white dots, forming constellations in mesmerizing patterns. Ethan reached out and touched one of the points, and instantly the entire door began to react. The dots shifted, rearranging into new formations while a deep, resonant hum filled the corridor. The ground beneath him vibrated as the constellations realigned, creating a rotating spiral of light that converged at the center of the door. With a slow, grinding sound, the door slid open, revealing a chamber bathed in a dim gold glow. Ethan stepped inside and froze. Stretching before him was a vast hall, so long that its far end vanished into darkness. Suspended in the center of the hall, held aloft by invisible forces, were giant slabs of translucent crystal arranged in a perfect spiral formation. Each slab rotated slowly, glowing with warm golden light, and inside each crystal were scenes, moving scenes like fragments of memories preserved within. Ethan approached the nearest slab, mesmerized. Inside it he saw a lush landscape covered in greenery, enormous trees rising like living towers, and a group of ancient people working together in harmony. They shaped stone with their hands, bending it like clay, building structures that glowed with energy drawn from the earth. When Ethan moved to the next slab, the scene changed. This one showed a great migration, long lines of people traveling across vast plains carrying glowing artifacts that hummed with life. The next lab showed their meeting with another group, a sharing of knowledge that lit the sky with radiant bursts of light. The next lab, however, darkened. This one depicted destructive storms, violent quakes tearing their world apart, and desperate faces as people carved deep into the earth, trying to preserve what mattered most. Ethan realized he was walking through the history of this forgotten civilization, each slab a chapter frozen in crystal. The spiral grew tighter as he advanced, each memory becoming more intense, more desperate, until he reached the center of the hall where a massive crystal pillar rose from the ground to the ceiling. This pillar was brighter than all the others combined, glowing with a golden fire that seemed almost alive. Ethan stepped closer, and the moment he touched its surface, the chamber erupted in light. He was thrown into a blinding whirlwind of visions, hundreds, thousands, flashing through his mind in dizzying waves. He saw the great collapse, monstrous forces shaking the land until entire cities fell into the earth. He saw the last of the ancient builders sealing their greatest creation deep underground. He saw a symbol, a circular mechanism glowing with blue energy, designed to awaken only when someone capable arrived to complete what they could not. He saw a prophecy carved into the deepest walls, that a wanderer from the surface, carrying a mind unbound by fear and a heart driven by curiosity, would one day enter these halls and unlock the final chamber. And then he saw something that made his breath stop. His own face reflected in the crystal, standing before the final mechanism. The vision faded abruptly, leaving him trembling and drenched in sweat. The pillar dimmed back to its warm glow, and silence filled the hall again. Ethan backed away, heart racing, mind spinning. The chamber had shown him his role, not as a witness, but as a participant in something ancient and incomprehensibly vast. He looked toward the far end of the hall where a narrow passage opened, illuminated by a deep blue glow that pulsed like a heartbeat calling to him. He knew without doubt that this passage led to the final mechanism, the one the crystal had shown him, the one he was meant to find. Ethan steadied himself, inhaled slowly, and stepped toward the glowing passage with a mixture of dread and determination. Whatever awaited him was no longer just a discovery, it was destiny, written long before he was born, etched into the stones of a forgotten world, waiting for him to complete its final chapter.
Ethan moved into the deep blue passage, feeling the temperature drop sharply as though he had stepped into the breath of an ancient winter sealed away for millennia. The walls of the passage shimmered with streams of blue light that flowed downward like glowing waterfalls trapped beneath transparent stone. Every movement he made stirred the air with a soft electric buzz, and he felt tiny vibrations under his fingertips each time he brushed against the wall. The passage grew narrower and taller, like a fissure cut into the earth by a careful, deliberate hand. As he walked, the blue light intensified until it wrapped around him like a moving aura, illuminating every dust particle drifting through the air. After several minutes, the passage opened into a high circular chamber, unlike any he had seen before. The floor was smooth and reflective like polished obsidian, creating perfect mirror images of the glowing patterns on the walls. The chamber's walls formed 3 massive rings, stacked one above the other, each ring rotating in slow, silent motion, as though suspended by an unseen force. Thin lines of blue light ran along the rings, connecting them in a complex pattern that resembled a giant mechanical star frozen in time. In the center of the room stood a raised platform with a circular indentation engraved with thousands of tiny symbols spiraling inward toward a palm-shaped imprint. Ethan felt a jolt of recognition. This was the mechanism he had seen in the vision. He approached slowly, his footsteps echoing across the chamber like ripples across a still lake. As he stepped onto the platform, the rotating rings accelerated slightly, responding to his presence. The air thickened with energy, vibrating softly like the beginning of a storm. Ethan placed his hand over the palm imprint without pressing down, feeling warmth radiate from it. He hesitated only for a moment before lowering his hand. The instant his palm touched the imprint, the chamber awakened violently. The rings spun faster, lines of light shooting across their surfaces in rapid bursts. A deep, resonant hum filled the room, rising in pitch until it felt like the entire chamber was singing. The floor vibrated beneath Ethan's feet, and the walls lit up with moving glyphs that danced like living entities communicating through patterns. Ethan tried to lift his hand, but found it locked in place by a magnetic force. The energy surged up his arm like electricity mixed with liquid light, flooding into his chest, his head, his entire body. His vision blurred as he was engulfed in a vortex of images, memories of the ancient builders, their triumphs, their fears, their final attempts to preserve their knowledge. He saw them constructing this very mechanism as a gateway, a bridge between their dying era and the distant future. He saw their belief that someone would someday activate it and bring balance back to the land. The vortex intensified, and Ethan felt himself lifted slightly off the ground, suspended by the rotating rings of energy. His eyes glowed with reflected blue light, and the symbols on the walls aligned into a single unified pattern he instinctively understood, a map, but not of the surface world. It was a map of the underground labyrinth, showing countless chambers, tunnels, and nodes of energy, all converging on a single central point deep below everything he had explored. The mechanism released him abruptly, dropping him gently back onto the platform as the rings slowed to a steady rotation. The hum lowered to a deep pulse that resonated through his bones. Ethan staggered, catching his breath, trying to process the overwhelming flood of information now embedded in his mind. He looked around the chamber and immediately noticed something new. A narrow opening had appeared in the wall opposite him, its edges glowing with piercing white light. This was his next step. The mechanism had responded to him, accepted him, and now opened the way forward. Still trembling, Ethan moved toward the glowing opening. As he entered, he felt as though he was passing into a realm untouched by time. The passage was perfectly smooth, seamless, as if shaped by pure energy rather than tools. It curved downward in a gentle spiral, growing brighter with every step. The air became warmer, infused with a subtle scent like burning cedar mixed with fresh rain. Ethan felt a strange calm wash over him, replacing his fear with a sense of purpose that grew stronger the deeper he went. The spiral passage ended abruptly at a balcony carved into the side of an enormous subterranean canyon. Ethan gasped as he stepped forward. The canyon was so vast it seemed impossible that it existed beneath the earth. Towering crystalline pillars rose from the canyon floor, glowing with shifting colors. Streams of liquid light flowed between them like rivers suspended in midair. Entire clusters of floating stone platforms hovered above the canyon, held in place by beams of energy rising from the depths. The scale of it dwarfed everything he had seen so far. It was like standing at the edge of an ancient alien city hidden beneath the skin of the world. Ethan gripped the railing of the balcony, heart pounding with awe and dread. The map he had seen in the vision made sense now. Everything converged here. This canyon was the heart of the ancient system, the central node where unimaginable power had once flowed through the continent. And somewhere within this colossal chamber lay the final truth of the ancient civilization, the final message they had preserved for the future.
The wind grew sharper as Ethan moved farther into the ridge, the world around him becoming both wider and narrower at the same time. Wider, because he could now see the endless stretch of frozen valleys, silver rivers twisting like veins across a sleeping land. Narrower, because every step was controlled, precise, dangerous. The mountain had a way of reminding him that one mistake could mean the end of his journey. Yes, he pressed forward, driven by a purpose he could feel, but could not fully explain. As he descended into a narrow gorge, he noticed the walls rising high on both sides, carved by centuries of wind and water. Shadows shifted strangely across the rock, almost as if they were alive, but he kept moving. After an hour of steady walking, he reached a silent pool of water reflecting the sky like a broken mirror. In its stillness, he saw the outline of a figure behind him, and he spun around, heart racing. Nothing. Just stone, wind, emptiness. He knelt beside the water, cupping his hands to drink, but the surface trembled before he even touched it, ripples forming even though the wind had completely died. A low hum vibrated through the gorge, faint at first, then rising like a distant call. Ethan stood quickly, looking around, sensing something in the air, a presence, an energy, an awakening. Then he heard it clearly. Footsteps, echoing from deep inside a narrow tunnel in the rock wall. He approached slowly, placing one palm against the cold stone, feeling subtle warmth radiating from within. Impossible warmth that did not belong to a place like this. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Ethan's breath hung in the frozen air. He whispered a single question. "Who's there?" No answer, but the stone beneath his hand pulsed once like a heartbeat. He stepped back instinctively, unsure whether he had imagined it. Another pulse. Then a faint glow began to seep from the cracks around the tunnel entrance, golden and alive. Ethan reached toward it with trembling fingers, unsure whether it would burn him or guide him.
The moment his fingertips touched the light, the entire gorge began to vibrate. Snow slid from the upper ridges, pebbles danced along the ground, and the water behind him rippled violently. Ethan stumbled backward, eyes fixed on the growing glow, until finally the light formed a clear shape, an outline of a doorway where the rock had once been solid. A low sound, almost like a deep breath, filled the air. The doorway opened. Ethan felt a pull, gentle but undeniable, urging him forward into the unknown chamber beyond. For a moment he hesitated, knowing that crossing this threshold meant stepping into a part of the world that few had ever seen. Then he tightened the strap of his pack, steadied his heartbeat, and walked into the glowing passage as the mountain sealed the entrance behind him, leaving only silence in the gorge once more.
The passage narrowed as Ethan moved deeper into the glowing chamber, the walls pulsing gently like the inside of some living organism. The air was warmer here, carrying a subtle scent of earth and something metallic, something ancient. His footsteps made no sound, swallowed entirely by the strange luminescence that coated the stone. As he walked, the walls shifted in color, gold melting into amber, amber dissolving into deep crimson, each hue vibrating softly as if responding to his presence. Ethan reached out and brushed his fingertips along the smooth surface, and for a moment the colors flared brightly, illuminating symbols beneath the stone. They were not carved, but seemed to float within the rock, flickering like memories trapped in glass. He slowed, examining them, but the symbols changed each time he blinked, rearranging themselves in patterns he could not decipher. Something whispered through the corridor, a faint chorus of voices layered on top of each other, neither threatening nor comforting, simply present. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to remain steady, and continued forward until the passage suddenly widened into a cavernous hall. The ceiling rose high above him, lost in shimmering darkness. The floor beneath his boots glowed faintly with lines that branched like rivers on a map, converging toward a circular platform at the center of the room. Ethan stepped onto the platform carefully, and the moment he did, the entire hall responded. Light burst upward from the floor lines, shooting toward the ceiling in brilliant streams. Ethan shielded his eyes, but as the light softened, he saw a shape forming before him. A suspended crystal, larger than his torso, rotating slowly in midair. Its surface was fractured, each shard reflecting a different landscape. Forests, deserts, oceans, storms, and something else he couldn't name, something that made the air around him hum with electricity. The crystal's rotation slowed until one particular shard faced him directly. Inside it, he saw a scene so vivid it felt alive. A city of towering structures wrapped in golden light, connected by bridges that curved like the branches of a colossal tree. People moved along the pathways, but not like any people he knew. They were taller, their forms luminous, their movements fluid, as though gravity bent itself for them. Ethan leaned closer, breath tight in his chest, and the shard expanded suddenly, projecting the scene into the cavern around him. The hall dissolved, replaced by the glowing city, surrounding him completely. He reached out instinctively, and his hand passed through a stream of golden energy, sending ripples across the illusion. A voice echoed through the projection, soft yet resonant, speaking in a language he did not know, yet he somehow felt its meaning. It spoke of a time long before his own, of a civilization that had shaped the mountains and rivers not by force, but by resonance, harmonizing with the earth until the world itself responded to their will. The vision shifted abruptly. The golden city flickered, darkened, cracked. The sky split open with violent storms. Structures collapsed, and the luminous beings ran, their forms dimming. Ethan felt their fear vibrating through the air as the projection trembled violently.
A final burst of light erupted from the crystal, and the hall returned in an instant, silent once more. Ethan stumbled backward, heart racing, struggling to catch his breath. The crystal hovered before him, dim now, its glow reduced to a faint pulse. He didn't know if what he'd seen was memory, warning, or something else, but he felt the weight of it settle deep inside him. The floor beneath the platform shifted with a low rumble, revealing a stairway descending into darkness. The air that rose from below was cool and carried a hint of the outside world, fresh, untouched. Ethan steadied himself, took a final look at the fading crystal, and stepped on to the first stair. The chamber lights dimmed behind him as he descended, one step at a time, into a depth where no light reached, guided only by the distant echo of something calling him forward.
Ethan continued walking through the endless tunnel, the walls glowing faintly with a shifting light that seemed to move like liquid beneath his fingers, the air around him thick and humming with energy, each step resonating in rhythm with a distant vibration that he could feel in his chest and through the soles of his feet. The passage twisting downward in spirals, narrowing and widening at unpredictable intervals. The floor carved with strange symbols that flickered whenever he looked directly at them, and though he could not understand their meaning, he sensed they were guiding him, urging him forward toward something important, a presence he could not see but felt acutely. The deeper he went, the more the light intensified, casting intricate shadows on the walls that danced and shifted like living forms, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation, until the tunnel opened into a massive cavern whose ceiling was lost in shadow, and the air was alive with a pulsing blue glow that emanated from countless veins of energy running along the walls, stretching across the floor, and rising from pillars that seemed to grow from the ground like crystalline trees. The chamber, so vast, it swallowed sound and light, and in the center, a floating platform hovered above a circular pit of shimmering liquid, the surface reflecting light like molten glass. Ethan approached cautiously, feeling a pull stronger than gravity drawing him closer. And as he stepped onto the platform, the liquid below began to swirl violently, forming shapes and symbols that danced in response to his presence, the vibrations in the chamber intensifying, resonating through his entire body. The liquid rising in arcs toward him as though alive, carrying visions in its currents, visions of cities lost to time, of beings who walked in harmony with forces beyond human comprehension, of storms and destruction, of creation and rebirth. And he realized that everything he had seen and felt since entering this world was leading him here, that the chamber itself was alive and aware, and that the liquid, the platform, the energy streams were all part of a mechanism designed to test him, to show him the knowledge and power he would need to unlock the deeper secrets below. And as he stepped closer to the edge, the liquid surged upward, forming a spiraling column of light that encircled him, lifting him slightly. And in that instant, he understood the vision the chamber was imparting, the interconnectedness of all that had come before and all that was yet to come, the responsibility that now rested on his shoulders, the potential for both salvation and destruction. And the liquid, now calm, sank back into the pit as the platform stabilized, leaving Ethan alone once again in the vast, silent chamber, aware that the next step would take him farther than he had ever been, into the heart of this hidden world where the ultimate truth waited. And with a deep breath, he moved forward toward a narrow passage at the far end, its walls glowing faintly with white-blue light, guiding him into darkness and into destiny.
Ethan stepped into the narrow passage, the faint blue glow along the walls pulsing softly like a heartbeat, guiding him deeper into the earth as the air grew heavier, charged with a strange energy that made his skin tingle. The passage winding downward in a slow spiral, narrowing and then widening unpredictably. the walls covered in patterns that shifted subtly, as if alive, responding to his presence, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber behind him until he could barely hear them over the low hum that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. And as he moved forward, he felt an irresistible pull leading him toward a distant light that glimmered faintly ahead, drawing him onward with a force both gentle and insistent. The further he walked, the more the air seemed to vibrate around him, carrying whispers in a language he could not understand but somehow intuitively felt the meaning of. The tunnel opening suddenly into a vast cavern, where the ceiling was lost in shadow and the floor stretched out like a shimmering map, carved with geometric lines that glowed faintly. Converging on a raised platform in the center, floating slightly above a swirling pool of energy that reflected the light in mesmerizing patterns. Ethan stepped onto the platform cautiously, feeling the vibration beneath his feet intensify, the air around him buzzing with power as the pool began to churn and rise, forming arcs of energy that coiled around him, carrying visions of lost civilizations. Beings of light walking across cities of crystal, rivers of energy flowing through mountains and valleys, storms tearing apart landscapes, and then calming again, as if in cycles of creation and destruction. And he realized that all of it was connected: the chambers, the tunnels, the pools, the floating platform, and now him. The chamber imparting knowledge, responsibility, and warning simultaneously. The swirling energy forming a spiral that lifted him slightly above the platform, revealing glimpses of the deeper world below. Intricate networks of light and stone connecting chambers and passages, each pulsing in rhythm with a central core of unimaginable power. And as the vision reached its peak, the energy receded, leaving the platform still and the pool calm, the glowing patterns on the floor settling into a steady rhythm. And in the far wall, a new passage opened, lined with faint white-blue light that beckoned him forward. The vibration of the chamber fading behind him, but still echoing in his bones, reminding him that every step he had taken, every decision, had led him to this threshold. And with a steadying breath, he moved into the glowing passage, stepping into the unknown, feeling the weight of ancient knowledge and the pull of destiny guiding him deeper into the heart of the underground world where the ultimate secret awaited. And the darkness ahead was not empty, but alive with possibility, danger, and revelation. And Ethan walked forward, unwavering, ready to face whatever had been waiting for centuries beneath the surface.
Ethan moved deeper into the glowing passage, the walls narrowing slightly as the light pulsed rhythmically, each beat resonating in his chest and guiding his steps. The air charged with a subtle warmth that contrasted the chill of the tunnels above. The floor beneath him uneven but steady, etched with faint geometric lines that flickered in response to his presence. And as he walked, the tunnel began to slope downward, spiraling gently like a coil leading to the Earth's hidden core. The soft hum of energy growing louder, vibrating through every bone, every nerve, until it became almost deafening yet strangely comforting. The farther he went, the more he felt a pull toward a distant focal point, where the light intensified, and the walls seemed to breathe, shifting subtly as if alive, forming shapes that resembled ancient maps, constellations, and symbols that hinted at knowledge beyond human comprehension. And then the tunnel opened abruptly into a vast chamber, whose ceiling was lost in shadow, and whose floor stretched endlessly before him, lined with glowing streams of energy that crisscrossed in intricate patterns, leading to a raised circular platform at the center, hovering slightly above a pool of liquid light that shimmered like molten glass. Ethan stepped onto the platform, feeling the vibration beneath his feet increase, a resonance that communicated both warning and guidance, as the liquid began to swirl, rising in arcs that encircled him, carrying visions, cities built of crystal and stone, beings taller and more luminous than humans moving gracefully through streets, rivers of energy flowing through mountains, storms consuming and rebuilding landscapes, civilizations rising and falling in cycles he could feel rather than see, and he realized that the chamber itself was alive, a conscious entity, imparting knowledge and testing his perception. And as he tried to comprehend the vastness of what he was witnessing, the liquid formed a spiral of energy, lifting him slightly above the platform, showing networks of tunnels and chambers that connected the entire underground world like veins of a living organism. The hum reaching a peak that resonated with the core of his being, imparting understanding of forces both destructive and creative. And then, as suddenly as it began, the energy receded, the pool settling into calm, the light dimming slightly, and a narrow passage appeared on the far side of the chamber, glowing faintly with white-blue light, beckoning him forward. The vibrations still echoing faintly through the walls, a reminder that the chamber had not finished communicating, that his journey was far from over. And with every fiber of his being, he stepped toward the passage, the light growing brighter, the air charged with anticipation, the shadows behind him retreating into silence, carrying him forward into the unknown, deeper into the heart of the subterranean world, where the ultimate truth, the culmination of all he had seen and felt, waited silently to be revealed. And with steady steps, he moved onward, unwavering, fully aware that the path ahead would challenge everything he thought he knew and demand that he become more than he had ever been, guided only by the light, the hum, and the inexorable pull of destiny that had been waiting for him since the very first step he had taken into the tunnels.
Ethan continued down the glowing passage, the walls narrowing and curving, as if the tunnel itself was alive, each step sending vibrations up through his feet that resonated with the hum of energy filling the air. The faint blue-white light casting shadows that shifted constantly, forming shapes that suggested doors, windows, and pathways that may or may not exist. The further he walked, the heavier the air became, infused with a metallic warmth that made his skin tingle. The floor beneath his feet covered in intricate patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the faint hum, guiding him forward toward an unseen focal point. And as he descended, the passage widened slightly, opening into a cavernous space where the ceiling disappeared into darkness, the walls lined with veins of glowing energy that converged on a raised platform at the center, hovering above a pool of liquid light that swirled and pulsed like a heartbeat. Ethan stepped onto the platform, and the vibrations intensified, coursing through his entire body, the pool rising in arcs to encircle him, and within the liquid he saw visions of worlds long past, of civilizations of beings of light moving gracefully across cities of crystal and stone, rivers of energy flowing through mountains and valleys, storms consuming and rebuilding landscapes, cycles of creation and destruction. And he understood that the chamber was alive, a conscious entity designed to impart knowledge, to test him, to awaken his perception. And as he absorbed these visions, the liquid spiraled upward, lifting him above the platform, showing him the interconnected network of tunnels, chambers, and energy nodes that formed the entire subterranean world. The hum reaching a crescendo that vibrated through his very soul, transmitting understanding, responsibility, and warning. And then, as quickly as it began, the energy receded.
The pool calmed, the platform stabilized, and a narrow passage appeared across the chamber, glowing faintly with white-blue light, beckoning him forward, the hum fading to a steady rhythm that resonated in his chest, as a reminder that the chamber had imparted its message, but that his journey was far from over. And with a deep breath, Ethan stepped toward the passage, every fiber of his being aware that the path ahead would challenge him, transform him, demand more than he had ever given before. And yet, he moved forward without hesitation, guided by the light, the hum, and the inexorable pull of destiny. Descending deeper into the heart of the hidden world where the ultimate secret awaited. The darkness ahead, alive with anticipation, danger, revelation, and the promise of knowledge that had been hidden for centuries. And Ethan walked onward determined, unwavering, fully aware that each step brought him closer to the culmination of everything he had seen, felt, and experienced, toward the moment where the underground world itself would reveal the truth it had been guarding since time immemorial.
Ethan moved steadily through the narrow, glowing passage, each step echoing softly against the walls as the light pulsed gently in rhythm with a deep vibration that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. The air thick with an electric warmth that made his skin tingle and his hair stand on end. The tunnel twisting and spiraling downward, narrowing at points and then opening into wider spaces that gave glimpses of strange patterns etched into the walls like maps of a forgotten world. The deeper he went, the more he felt an invisible pull, drawing him forward, compelling him to move faster, yet cautiously, aware that every step carried weight, significance, and consequence. And as he turned a final bend, the passage opened abruptly into a cavern so vast that the ceiling disappeared into shadow, the walls lined with streams of glowing energy that arced and twisted like flowing rivers of light, converging on a central platform that hovered just above a pool of liquid energy, swirling with colors he could not name. Ethan approached the platform slowly, feeling the vibrations beneath his feet intensify, sending shivers through his bones as the liquid began to rise and spiral around him, carrying visions within its currents, visions of cities built of crystal and stone, beings taller and more luminous than humans, moving gracefully through streets suspended above rivers of pure energy. Storms consuming and rebuilding landscapes, civilizations rising and falling in intricate cycles. And he understood that the chamber itself was alive, conscious, a repository of knowledge and power, testing him, showing him, guiding him. The liquid spiraling higher, lifting him gently above the platform, revealing the entire network of tunnels, chambers, and energy conduits below, the hum reaching a crescendo that resonated through his mind, transmitting understanding, insight, warning, and responsibility simultaneously. And then, just as abruptly, the energy receded, the liquid settled back into the pool. The platform stabilized, and a narrow passage appeared at the far side of the chamber, glowing faintly with a white-blue light that beckoned him forward, the hum fading to a steady, comforting rhythm that vibrated in his chest, reminding him that his journey was far from over, that the underground world still held countless secrets and trials. And with a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the new passage, each step guided by the glow, the hum, and the inexorable pull of destiny, descending further into the heart of the hidden world where the ultimate truth waited silently, alive and watching, the darkness ahead filled with the promise of revelation, danger, and knowledge.
and Ethan moved forward with unwavering resolve, fully aware that each moment brought him closer to uncovering the secret the subterranean world had guarded for centuries, a secret that would change everything he thought he knew about the Earth, the civilizations that had come before, and the role he was destined to play in the continuation of its story. And still he walked on, steady, determined, moving ever deeper into the unknown.
Ethan advanced through the glowing passage, the walls undulating subtly as if breathing, the pulsing blue-white light stretching forward endlessly, the floor beneath his feet inscribed with intricate patterns that shimmered and shifted with each step, the vibration in the air growing stronger with every movement, resonating deep within his chest, compelling him onward, the tunnel twisting and spiraling downward into darkness that was somehow alive, alive with energy that hummed and whispered in a language he could not understand, yet instinctively felt. The further he descended, the warmer the air became, infused with a metallic scent that tingled in his nostrils and made his skin prickle, the tunnel opening at intervals into wider chambers where faint streams of energy flowed along the walls and ceiling like rivers of light, guiding him as if the underground world itself had a consciousness. And then, after what felt like hours of walking, he entered a vast cavern whose ceiling disappeared into shadow, the walls etched with glowing lines that intersected like veins carrying life through stone. In the center floated a platform above a pool of liquid energy swirling with colors beyond description. Ethan stepped onto it, cautiously, the vibrations beneath his feet intensifying until they resonated in his bones, the liquid rising in arcs to encircle him, carrying visions of civilizations lost to time, towers of crystal, beings of light moving gracefully, rivers of energy threading through mountains, storms consuming and reconstructing landscapes. And he understood that the chamber was not merely a space, but a living entity, a repository of knowledge, testing him, imparting wisdom, showing him the connections between past, present, and future. The liquid spiraling higher, lifting him slightly above the platform, revealing the sprawling network of tunnels, chambers, and energy nodes that connected the subterranean world as one cohesive, living organism. The hum reaching a crescendo, vibrating in his mind, transmitting understanding, responsibility, and warning simultaneously. Then, as suddenly as it began, the energy subsided, the liquid settled, the platform stabilized, and a narrow passage appeared on the far side, glowing faintly with white-blue light, beckoning him forward, the vibrations fading to a steady rhythm, a reminder that his journey was far from complete. And with a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the passage, the glow illuminating the path ahead, the hum guiding his steps, the pull of destiny carrying him deeper into the hidden world where the ultimate truth awaited. The darkness ahead alive with anticipation, challenges, and revelation. And he moved forward with unwavering determination, fully aware that each step brought him closer to uncovering the secrets the subterranean world had guarded for centuries, a truth that would change everything he knew about the Earth, its lost civilizations, and his role in the continuation of its story. And still he walked, steady, determined, descending further into the unknown where nothing was as it seemed and everything was waiting to be revealed.
Ethan moved forward through the glowing passage, the light along the walls pulsing softly in rhythm with the deep vibration that resonated through the floor and up into his body. The tunnel twisting downward in slow spirals, narrowing in some sections and widening in others, the walls alive with shifting patterns that hinted at maps, constellations, and symbols of civilizations long forgotten. The further he went, the stronger the pull became, compelling him onward with a force both subtle and undeniable. The air thick with a warm metallic tang that made his skin tingle.
The faint hum of energy growing louder, vibrating through his chest, urging him forward, and then, after a long descent, the passage opened abruptly into a cavern of vast proportions, the ceiling lost in shadows, walls lined with streams of glowing energy converging on a central floating platform above a pool of liquid light that shimmered and swirled like molten glass. Ethan stepped onto the platform, the vibrations beneath his feet intensifying until they resonated through his entire being. The liquid rising and spiraling around him, carrying visions of cities of crystal and stone, beings taller and more luminous than humans, moving gracefully through streets suspended above rivers of energy. Storms consuming and reshaping landscapes, civilizations rising and falling in endless cycles. And he realized the chamber was a living entity, imparting knowledge, testing him, showing the connection of past, present, and future. The liquid spiraling higher, lifting him above the platform, revealing the interconnected tunnels, chambers, and energy conduits forming the subterranean world as a cohesive living organism. The hum crescendoing until it vibrated through his mind, transmitting understanding, responsibility, and warning simultaneously. Then, as suddenly as it began, the energy subsided. The liquid settled back into the pool, the platform stabilized, and a narrow passage appeared at the far side, glowing faintly with white-blue light, beckoning him forward. The vibrations fading to a steady rhythm as a reminder that his journey was far from over. And, with a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the passage, the glow illuminating the way, the hum guiding him, the pull of destiny carrying him deeper into the heart of the hidden world, where the ultimate secret waited, the darkness ahead alive with anticipation, revelation, and challenge. And he moved forward with unwavering resolve, fully aware that each step brought him closer to uncovering the truths the subterranean world had guarded for centuries, secrets that would alter his understanding of the earth, its lost civilizations, and the role he was destined to play in their continuation. And still he walked, steady, determined, descending deeper into the unknown, where the ultimate revelation awaited, silently, patiently, and inevitably.
Ethan pressed onward through the glowing passage, the walls alive with shifting streams of light that pulsed rhythmically, resonating with a deep vibration that seemed to originate from the very core of the earth. The floor beneath him etched with intricate patterns that flickered and shifted in response to his movements. The air thick with energy that made his skin tingle and his chest hum. The tunnel winding downward in a slow, spiraling descent, narrowing and expanding unpredictably. The further he went, the stronger the pull became, as if some unseen force was guiding him toward a destination he could not yet comprehend. And then the passage opened suddenly into a vast cavern whose ceiling was lost in darkness, walls lined with glowing veins of energy converging on a central floating platform above a pool of liquid light swirling with colors beyond imagination. Ethan stepped onto the platform cautiously, feeling the vibrations intensify beneath his feet until they resonated through his entire being. The liquid rising in spirals to encircle him, carrying visions within its currents, cities of crystal and stone, luminous beings moving gracefully through streets suspended above rivers of energy, storms consuming and reshaping landscapes, civilizations rising and falling in endless cycles of creation and destruction. And he realized the chamber itself was alive, conscious, a repository of knowledge and power, testing him, teaching him, imparting insight. The liquid lifting him gently above the platform, revealing the interconnected network of tunnels, chambers, and energy conduits that formed the entire subterranean world as one living organism. The hum crescendoing to vibrate through his mind, transmitting understanding, responsibility, and warning simultaneously. Then, as abruptly as it began, the energy subsided, the liquid settled, The platform stabilized, and a narrow passage appeared on the far side, glowing faintly with white-blue light, beckoning him forward. The vibrations fading to a steady rhythm, a reminder that his journey was far from over. And with a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the passage, the glow illuminating the path, the hum guiding him, the pull of destiny compelling him deeper into the heart of the hidden world, where the ultimate secret waited silently. The darkness ahead alive with anticipation, danger, revelation, and the promise of knowledge that had been guarded for centuries. And he walked onward, unwavering, fully aware that each step brought him closer to uncovering the truth of the subterranean world, the civilizations lost to time, and the role he was destined to play in continuing their story. Moving steadily, determined, descending further into the unknown, where nothing was as it seemed, and everything awaited revelation.
Ethan continued through the glowing passage, the walls alive with shifting veins of light that pulsed in rhythm with the deep vibration that resonated through the floor and up into his bones, the air thick and warm, carrying a metallic tang that tingled against his skin, the tunnel twisting downward in spirals, narrowing and widening unpredictably. The farther he went, the stronger the pull became, guiding him forward with an invisible force, compelling him onward. And then the passage opened into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in darkness, walls lined with streams of glowing energy converging on a central floating platform above a pool of liquid light that shimmered and swirled like molten glass. Ethan stepped cautiously onto the platform, the vibrations beneath his feet intensifying until they coursed through his entire body. The liquid rising in arcs to encircle him, carrying visions within its currents, cities of crystal and stone, luminous beings moving gracefully through suspended streets, rivers of energy flowing through mountains and valleys, storms consuming and reshaping landscapes, civilizations rising and falling in endless cycles. And he understood that the chamber was alive, conscious, a repository of knowledge designed to test, teach, and reveal. The liquid spiraling higher, lifting him gently above the platform, revealing the entire interconnected network of tunnels, chambers, and energy conduits, forming the subterranean world as a living organism. The hum reaching a crescendo, vibrating through his mind, transmitting understanding, responsibility, and warning all at once. And then, as abruptly as it began, the energy receded, the liquid settled, the platform stabilized, and a narrow passage appeared across the chamber, glowing faintly with white-blue light, beckoning him forward, the vibrations fading to a steady rhythm, reminding him that his journey was far from complete. And with a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the passage, the glow illuminating the way, the hum guiding each step, the pull of destiny carrying him deeper into the hidden world where the ultimate secret waited silently, alive and aware. The darkness ahead charged with anticipation, danger, revelation, and the promise of knowledge that had been hidden for centuries, and he walked onward with unwavering determination, fully aware that every step brought him closer to uncovering the truth of the subterranean world, the civilizations lost to time, and the role he was destined to play in continuing their story. Moving steadily, deliberately, descending further into the unknown, where the ultimate revelation awaited, patiently, inevitably, and entirely within his grasp.
Ethan moved deeper into the glowing passage, the walls alive with streams of shifting light that pulsed rhythmically, resonating with a deep vibration that traveled through the floor and into his bones. The air thick and charged, tingling against his skin with warmth and metallic energy.
The tunnel spiraling downward, narrowing and widening in unpredictable intervals, the pull forward growing stronger with each step, as if an unseen force guided him toward a destiny he could not yet see. And then the passage opened into a cavern so vast that the ceiling disappeared into shadow, the walls lined with glowing veins of energy converging on a central floating platform above a pool of liquid light swirling like molten glass. Ethan stepped onto the platform cautiously, the vibrations beneath him intensifying, resonating through his entire body as the liquid rose and spiraled around him, carrying visions of lost civilizations, cities built of crystal and stone, luminous beings moving gracefully through suspended streets, rivers of pure energy flowing through mountains and valleys, storms consuming and reshaping landscapes, civilizations rising and falling in endless cycles, and he understood that the chamber itself was alive, a conscious entity, a repository of knowledge and power, designed to test, teach, and reveal. The liquid lifting him gently above the platform, showing the interconnected tunnels, chambers, and energy conduits forming the subterranean world as a living organism. The hum crescendoing in his mind, transmitting understanding, responsibility, and warning all at once. Then, as abruptly as it began, the energy receded, the liquid settled, the platform stabilized, and a narrow passage appeared on the far side, glowing faintly with white-blue light, beckoning him forward, the vibrations fading to a steady rhythm, a reminder that his journey was far from complete. And with a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the passage, the glow illuminating his path, the hum guiding him, the pull of destiny carrying him deeper into the hidden world where the ultimate secret waited silently, alive and aware, the darkness ahead charged with anticipation, revelation, and challenge. And he moved onward with unwavering determination, fully aware that every step brought him closer to uncovering the truth of the subterranean world, the civilizations lost to time, and the role he was destined to play in continuing their story. Moving steadily, deliberately, descending further into the unknown, where the ultimate revelation awaited, patiently, inevitably, and entirely within his grasp, the passage stretching before him endlessly, a living corridor of light and energy, guiding, testing, and preparing him for what lay ahead. And Ethan walked forward without hesitation, entirely focused, entirely present, ready to face the secrets that had waited in darkness for centuries, ready to understand, ready to endure, and ready to emerge transformed.
Ethan continued through the glowing passage, the walls alive with streams of shifting light that pulsed in harmony with a deep vibration, resonating through the floor and up into his bones, the air thick with energy, tingling against his skin, warm yet metallic. The tunnel spiraling downward in twists and curves, narrowing and widening unpredictably, the pull forward growing stronger with each step, as if the passage itself guided him toward a destiny he could not yet comprehend. And then the tunnel opened into a vast cavern, the ceiling lost in darkness, walls lined with glowing veins of energy, converging on a central floating platform above a pool of liquid light swirling like molten glass. Ethan stepped cautiously onto the platform, the vibrations beneath his feet intensifying until they coursed through his entire body, the liquid rising and spiraling around him, carrying visions of lost civilizations, cities built of crystal and stone, luminous beings moving gracefully through suspended streets, rivers of energy threading through mountains and valleys, storms consuming and reshaping landscapes, civilizations rising and falling in endless cycles, and he realized the chamber was alive, conscious, a living repository of knowledge and power, designed to test, teach, and reveal. the liquid lifting him gently above the platform, revealing the interconnected tunnels, chambers, and energy conduits that formed the subterranean world as a cohesive organism. The hum crescendoing in his mind, transmitting understanding, responsibility, and warnings all at once. Then, as abruptly as it began, the energy receded, the liquid settled, the platform stabilized, and a narrow passage appeared at the far side, glowing faintly with white-blue light, beckoning him forward. The vibrations fading to a steady rhythm, reminding him that his journey was far from complete. And with a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the passage, the glow illuminating the path, the hum guiding his steps, the pull of destiny carrying him deeper into the hidden world where the ultimate secret waited silently, alive and aware, the darkness ahead charged with anticipation, revelation, and challenge. And he moved onward with unwavering determination, fully aware that every step brought him closer to uncovering the truth of the subterranean world, the civilizations lost to time, and the role he was destined to play in continuing their story. Moving steadily, deliberately, descending further into the unknown, where the ultimate revelation awaited, patiently, inevitably, entirely within his grasp, the passage stretching endlessly before him, a living corridor of light and energy, guiding, testing, and preparing him for what lay ahead. And Ethan walked forward without hesitation, entirely focused, entirely present, ready to face the secrets that had waited in darkness for centuries, ready to understand, ready to endure, and ready to emerge transformed.
Ethan stepped deeper into the glowing passage, the light along the walls pulsing steadily, the vibration beneath his feet harmonizing with the hum in the air, each step resonating through his body. The tunnel spiraling downward and then straightening, narrowing and widening unpredictably, guiding him toward a destination he could feel but not yet see. And finally, the passage opened into the ultimate chamber, vast beyond imagination, the ceiling lost in shadows, walls lined with rivers of glowing energy converging on a central floating platform above a pool of liquid light, shimmering and shifting like molten glass. Ethan stepped onto the platform, the vibrations intensifying, the liquid rising in arcs to surround him, carrying visions of ancient civilizations, cities of crystal and stone, luminous beings moving gracefully above rivers of energy, storms consuming and recreating landscapes, civilizations rising and falling in eternal cycles. And he realized the chamber itself was alive, conscious, a repository of knowledge, testing him, revealing, teaching, and preparing him. The liquid spiraling higher, lifting him above the platform, showing him the entire subterranean world, its tunnels, chambers, and energy conduits forming a living organism. The hum reaching a crescendo, vibrating through his mind, transmitting understanding, responsibility, and warnings all at once. And then, as suddenly as it began, the energy receded, the liquid settled, the platform stabilized. A narrow passage appeared on the far side, glowing with white-blue light, beckoning him forward, the vibrations fading to a steady rhythm, reminding him his journey was not yet complete. And with a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the passage, the glow illuminating the path ahead, the hum guiding him, the pull of destiny carrying him deeper into the hidden world where the ultimate secret awaited. The darkness ahead alive with anticipation, revelation, and challenge. Moving onward with unwavering determination, fully aware that each step brought him closer to uncovering the truth of the subterranean world, the civilizations lost to time, and the role he was destined to play, descending steadily into the unknown where the ultimate revelation awaited